Neil Orfield here, founder of the Flaniverse, back to demonstrate once again how I'm using Run the Sims to try to win a lot of money in NFL DFS this year. I'll be doing these demos all season, and my hope is that you'll join me. If you're interested in checking out Run the Sims, I've got some great news for you. Starting this week, we've got a big bump in the promo at Run the Sims, up from 10% off your first payment to now 50% off your first payment on any NFL product at Run the Sims with promo code Neil. I highly recommend checking it out if you haven't already done so. Before we get into the demo, please do like this video and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already done so. I'm trying to get to 6,000 subscribers by the end of the NFL season and could really use your support. Without further delay, let's get into how I'm using Run the Sims for the Week 10 NFL main slate on DraftKings. One of the reasons I love Run the Sims is that it is highly customizable. You can change things at the team level. You can change the number of points you expect a team to score, the number of plays you expect them to run, the rush rate versus pass rate, the rush touchdown rate versus pass touchdown rate, all of that at the team level. And then at the player level, you can also change things like the rushing market share, the rushing touchdown market share, same thing for receiving, et cetera, et cetera. You can change a lot in Run the Sims. However, for the first run of the Sims, I actually don't like to change anything in the inputs because I want to see what the Sims are going to give me naturally before I make any changes to get to more of players I like or less of players that I don't like as much. So for my first run of the Sims, I'm actually not going to change anything here in the inputs. The only thing I will change is I'm going to go into the settings and set up for the types of contests that I play. Now, I primarily play large field contests, so I'm going to set up for those contests. Obviously, you want to set it up for the types of contests that you play. For large field contests, I'm going to do the maximum number of lineups. I'm going to do the maximum size of contest field. Obviously, this is because that will most closely mimic the types of contests that I play. If you're playing contests that are only 1,000 entries in them, you're going to want to use the contest field size closer to what you're playing. Number of Sims, I'm going to use the maximum 10,000. For the payout structure, I'm going to choose the top heavy payout structure, again, because the large field contests that I play tend to be very top heavy in the payout structure. I'm not going to change anything here in these lineups fields because Run the Sims, pretty powerful product operated by some of the best players in DFS. So I want to trust what the product is doing. And rather than telling the Sims that I want to use full salary cap or close to the full salary cap, if the Sims tell me that a lineup that uses only $48,000 of the salary cap makes it to the top a lot, I want to just trust the Sims and trust that that is a good lineup. So I'm not going to change anything in the salary range. I'm not even going to require quarterback stacks because, again, the Sims should be better at figuring out correlations than I am. Rather than just trying to force in, I always want to double stack with my quarterback. The Sim should know exactly more accurately how often the quarterback should be double stacked versus triple stacked versus single stacked, or maybe occasionally not stacked at all. Those correlations, because Run the Sims is doing play-by-play Sims followed by contest level Sims, that should be accounted for in the Sim. So I don't need to tell Sims to do those kind of things the same way you would need to with an optimizer. The one thing that I will choose here is the Shady Portfolio Diversifier. This is an add-on product provided by Shady Advice, another one of the best DFS players in the world. And what really sets Shady apart from the rest of the field is his portfolio diversifier. He's always playing a really diverse set of lineups. It's a really sophisticated product that I would not even try to explain how it works, except for it tries to give you the best EV portfolio of lineups rather than just giving you the top 150 lineups in terms of EV. It's going to give you lineups that aren't going to cannibalize each other. It's going to minimize your risk of ruin. So I'm going to use the product where it is available. This is, again, an add-on, so it's not available at every level of Run the Sims. You have to pay up for the Shady Portfolio Diversifier, but I highly recommend it if you play a lot of DFS. If you don't use that, you can just sort yourself, choose the lineups from the top EV lineups after you spit them out. Okay, I am now just going to click this Sim Runner Pro button to get the Sims going. This is going to take a few minutes, and I'm going to cut that part out of the video. All right, the first run of the Sims are in. I'm going to start just by reading off some of the top lineups. I'm going to read off the first four here because they all have different quarterbacks, look like pretty different lineups at the top, and honestly, some pretty surprising ones to me. After I read off these top lineups, I'm just going to go into the players I'm getting to the most in my player exposures. First lineup here, pretty surprising one because we have a Jared Goff double stack, and then the defense is the commander. So the opposing defense going against Jared Goff. You don't see that all that often, but it does pop up occasionally. Again, sometimes defensive scoring does not correlate with how many points the defense is allowing. So this could be a case where Jared Goff throws a few touchdowns, also throws a pick six, and after he throws the pick six, the Lions get the ball back and they're in a better position to be throwing the ball because they obviously don't have a huge lead or are less likely to have a huge lead after the Commanders get a pick six. So that's kind of an interesting one that you don't see all the time. But along with Jared Goff, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Sam Laporta, we have Rico Dowdle, Trevion Henderson, Khalil Shakir, Zay Flowers, Trey McBride, and again, the Commanders defense. Second lineup is a Vikings triple stack. JJ McCarthy, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and TJ Hawkinson all make it into this lineup, along with Devin Achane, Rico Dowdle, Emeka Egbuka, Jawan Jennings, and the Houston Texans defense. Third lineup is a Jackson Dart double stack with Wan'Dale Robinson and Theo Johnson. It has Trevion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Justin Jefferson, Jawan Johnson, and the Tampa Bay Bucks defense. Fourth lineup and fifth lineup, both Davis Mills. The fourth one is Davis Mills with both Christian Kirk and Nico Collins. Double stack there has Trevion Henderson, DeAndre Swift, Emeka Egbuka, Sam Laporta, Puka Nacua, and the Jets defense. You can see no bringbacks here in any of these top lineups, unless I'm missing one here. So you'll see it in some of the sims. You'll get some big game stacks, but here we're not seeing a lot of bringbacks. Just primarily double stacks, triple stacks with our quarterback. Then a lot of the best plays. Looking at my player exposures at the quarterback position, the quarterbacks I'm getting to in double digits are 21% Jared Goff, 17% JJ McCarthy, 12% Jackson Dart. That's it as far as quarterbacks that I'm getting to in double digits. Running backs in double digits getting to 37% Rico Dowdle, 21% James Cook, 19% Devin Achane, 45% Trevion Henderson, 23% DeAndre Swift, 11% Quinshon Judkins. Wide receivers getting to 27% Jackson Smith and Jigba, 35% Amon-Ra St. Brown, 17% Puka Nacua, 16% Emeka Egbuka, 11% Zay Flowers, 21% Justin Jefferson, 23% Wan'Dale Robinson, 21% Garrett Wilson, 13% Jalen Waddle, 11% Marvin Harrison Jr., 21% Jordan Addison, 11% Tez Johnson, 12% Chris Olave. Tight ends, I'm getting to 31% Trey McBride, 31% Sam Laporta, 17% George Kittle, 16% Jawan Johnson, 11% Mason Taylor. And finally, at defense, still pretty spread out as I usually am at defense, but we do have a couple in double digits here, 15% Jacksonville Jaguars and 11% Houston Texans. Now, last week I talked about not wanting to put my thumb on the scale as much going forward with Run the Sims because I want to let the Sims product do their thing. So last week I really only focused on getting to more of Brock Bowers and Geno Smith. This week, I got the feedback last week that people want me to put my thumb on the scale just a little bit more to give my takes on things I might want to change in the sim. So I'm going to, try to balance things a little bit here rather than going game by game and finding the things that I want to change. I'm just going to pick and choose a few more spots that I really like, things that I want to focus on this week in DFS. So I still want to let the sims kind of do their thing and kind of lead the charge, but I want to pick a few more spots that I want to, focus on certain angles that maybe the sims aren't giving me. At quarterback, I think there are just two spots that I'm not getting to currently that I'd like to get to. So I like some of the spots I'm getting to. I really like Jared Goff this week. I really like Jackson Dart this week. JJ McCarthy, of course, I'm always happy to get to JJ McCarthy as a Vikings homer. So I'm generally happy with what I'm getting. But the two spots that I see at quarterback that I think I'd rather get an overweight position rather than underweight, or at least maybe just closer to the field because they are pretty chalky. But I do think I like the spend ups this week. I think Josh Allen, 7,000, Lamar Jackson, 6,800 are just not as expensive as they should be. So currently I'm getting to just 1% Lamar Jackson, none of Josh Allen. I think that's because they're projected for a lot of ownership, 13% going to Allen, 10% going to Lamar Jackson. But I think those are both kind of fun game environments. So those are the two quarterbacks I'm going to focus on, is getting to more of Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. So when I tweak things, I'm going to try to get to a bit more of both of those pay up quarterbacks. At running back, there are a few that I think I'd like to get to more of. Now, first of all, I'm happy to be getting to a lot of Rico Dowdle. I think he should get a lot of carries this week against the Saints. I think he should do well at 6,300. So I'm right with the field. I think that's about where I'd like to be. Kind of terrified that I'm currently only getting 7% of Christian McCaffrey. I might want to boost that a little bit. I'm not sure if I'm going to force it in this run of the Sims, but maybe as I change some other things, I'll naturally get to more McCaffrey. Being projected here for 30% ownership, I think that's higher than I've seen elsewhere. But yeah, obviously a Christian McCaffrey fade, just given his volume, would be pretty terrifying. But that's not really a focus of mine necessarily. The spots that I really want to make sure I'm getting to more of, Quinshon Judkins to me is the best running back play of the slate, or maybe second best after Dowdle. But he's a pretty big focus of mine. So at ownership, and 14% here is even slightly higher than I've seen it elsewhere. I haven't really seen it get higher than like barely into double digits. So at pretty low ownership, he's a little bit more expensive than I think people want to pay given his recent production, and he's not really that involved in the passing game. But I think against this Jets defense that just traded away Quinnen Williams and Sauce Gardner, I think this could be a spot where the Browns are actually able to do a lot better than people are expecting against the Jets. And I think Quinshon Judkins is going to be leaned on here. New offensive coordinator there for the Browns, but just against a kind of beat up, playing a lot of backups Jets defense. I think the Browns should be able to move the ball pretty easily, and Judkins I think is pretty likely to get to 100-yard bonus, get a touchdown or two. Maybe we've seen him get three. Obviously, we're not expecting that with Judkins, but you don't need it. If he gets to 100 yards and a touchdown, we're very happy with Judkins. So I think at 6,500 and not getting to a ton of ownership, Judkins actually going to be a pretty big priority for me this week. So he's kind of my top priority at running back. We don't have the real like spend down options at running back this week that we have had in some weeks, which kind of makes me like the options there a little bit better because they don't have to beat out like a Kyle Monungai or some of the running backs we've had that are really cheap. It's like, well, I don't really want to play any of these other running backs because they'd have to put up a pretty big score, I think, to beat out some of the more obvious chalkier value running backs. Here we don't really have any great value running backs, which makes me think the ones that I'm more interested in, I'm more willing to kind of put my thumb on the scale and play more of those guys. So a couple of those names that I really like that are pay down options. Kenneth Walker getting a bit more involved for the Seahawks and just always capable of putting up a big run or two and breaking a slate. So at 5,300, I think Kenneth Walker pretty intriguing. Right now, I'm just getting to 6% right even with the field. I think I'd like to get to a bit more of Kenneth Walker than I'm getting to currently. If I got to, double the projected ownership on Walker, I'd be pretty happy with that. So he's kind of a focus of mine. Aaron Jones at 5,200 has looked pretty good with JJ McCarthy. Now, not being targeted a ton so far. They still have kind of a running back split there here in Minnesota. But I think Aaron Jones has looked really good. And when JJ McCarthy has targeted him, they've made some really nice plays together. So at 5,200, seemingly more involved. And the latest news is that he is going to play this week. I think Aaron Jones is a pretty strong play at 5,200. And I think maybe the Vikings will continue to build on that connection with JJ McCarthy and Aaron Jones. And we could continue to see some spike plays there. So at 5% ownership, 5,200 on a slate that lacks great value, I actually think Aaron Jones looks really good here as well. I don't think anybody has a really great read on the Bears running back situation. They're in a great spot against the Giants. DeAndre Swift, 6,100. Kyle Monungai, 5,600. Kind of remains to be seen how they're going to play it this week. I think Ben Johnson said this week it's going to be a hot hand situation between DeAndre Swift and Kyle Monungai. But Kyle Monungai comes in as a hot hand, just had a great game. He's up to 5,600, getting 5% ownership to just to 13% for DeAndre Swift. I think the Sims right now are kind of making the assumption that Swift is going to get the bulk of the carries. I'm not totally convinced that that is the case. I think Kyle Monungai could retain at least like an even workload, maybe even gets the bulk of the workload there on the Bears. To be clear, I'm not confident in what's going to happen. I don't think anybody is, but Monungai at 5,600, if he's not going to get a 3% projected ownership, that seems like a pretty strong play. And I'm already above the field. I wouldn't maybe mind getting to even a bit more. I'll also throw out Chris Rodriguez and Woody Marks. Both look pretty good as values. Rodriguez named the captain this week for the Commanders. Maybe gets the bell cow role. It could be just a split with Bill Krosky-Merritt once again, but he's only 4,200, and there's at least some chance that Chris Rodriguez takes on the bulk of the carries there for the Commanders. Not really a great matchup with the Lions or anything, but at 4,200, I think that he's a player I'd like to have some exposure to in my player pool. And then Woody Marks, even with Nick Chubb active, I think Woody Marks just has a strong role there for the Texans. Again, would be a bigger priority if they had any semblance of a capable offensive line. But at 5,100, I think Woody Marks is at least playable. Maybe I don't know that I'm actually going to force him into my lineups, but he's somebody that I'm considering at 5,100. And then one other player that I think I actually am going to force a bit more of here is Derrick Henry. I'm only getting to 1% currently at 6,800. I think he looks like a fairly strong play. Now, the Vikings defense has been a bit better against running backs in the first half. So if they're able to move the ball and keep the defense from getting worn down, I think that they actually have a pretty strong defense. But there have been several games this year where they have just not been able to keep the opposing offense off the field, and the defense wears down eventually. And Derrick Henry, obviously a player that can take advantage of a defense if it does get worn down. So 6,800, I think I'd like more than the 1% I'm getting to currently of Derrick Henry, somebody else that I might force a bit more into my lineups. At wide receiver, I'd say I'm generally happy with what I'm getting. I'm getting to a lot of the best wide receivers on the slate. Only really one player that I think I'm going to force into more of my lineups, and that is Rashad Bateman at 3,900. I think is a little bit sneaky. Hasn't really done it yet this year, but last year had multiple games with over 20 fantasy points. I think the role is just as good as last year. He just hasn't had a large sample size with Lamar Jackson so far this year. So at 3,900, if nobody's going to be playing Rashad Bateman and everybody's going to be playing Zay Flowers, I think he's a really strong leverage play on all that Zay Flowers chalk. I think he still has the ability to put up a big fantasy score. And again, he's only 3,900, not getting much ownership. So Rashad Bateman, kind of the one sneaky wide receiver play that I think I'm going to be forcing into more of my lineups. Jalen Coker may be a little bit interesting with Tedero McMillan possibly missing this game. So he's one that I'll throw out. I guess I just said that Rashad Bateman is the one, but now I'm seeing a few more that, maybe I'll play a bit of Jerry Jeudy at 3,900. Kyle Williams, I think, is playable at 3,000, has been taking on a bigger role. Now we have no Keyshawn Booty this week. Tight end, I think, this week is going to be kind of a like player tight end with the quarterback week. Other than Trey McBride looks great as usual. Like he's the clear best pay up option at tight end. Outside of Trey McBride, I don't have any really strong takes. I think it's going to be a lot of just take what the Sims give me, which is going to be a lot of quarterback with my or tight end with my quarterback. But I do think Laporta looks pretty good. Kittle looks good. Juwan Johnson, strong connection with Tyler Shuck, who he played with in college. He's been targeted pretty heavily by Tyler Shuck so far this year. I'm surprised that I'm getting to as much Mason Taylor as I'm getting to right now because he has just not looked that great outside of the game against Cincinnati with Justin Fields. Unclear if Harold Fannin is going to play. If Harold Fannin sits, I think David Njoku becomes a priority for me at 3,200. Not like a huge priority because again, I'm not sure that they're going to throw the ball that much in Cleveland, but he would be somebody I'd make sure to get at least even with the field, probably above the field at 3,200 if Harold Fannin misses, because so far Dylan Gabriel has liked focusing on tight ends, and David Njoku is just a bit too cheap for his role if Harold Fannin misses. All right, so now I'm going to go back to the inputs tab to make some changes to get to more of the players that I like. And I said I wasn't going to go game by game. I actually think it's going to be easier for me to remember all the changes that I want to make if I do go game by game. So I'm just going to do this quickly here. Starting with the Giants and the Bears, pretty happy with what I'm getting to of the Giants. I am getting to a fair amount of Jackson Dart and Wan'Dale Robinson. That makes sense to me. On the Bears side, I did say I want a bit more of Kyle Monungai if he's not going to get a ton of ownership. I think I'm going to even out the rushing market share. So I'm going to click this smart adjust button first. I think it's always a good idea to click the smart adjust button unless you're really trying to be precise about where you think points are going to be scored. The smart adjust button is just going to proportionally make changes. So if I change the rushing market share for a player, it's also going to change the rushing touchdown market share if you have that smart adjust button on. So what I'm going to do is we've got DeAndre Swift and Kyle Monungai, the split going in favor of Swift right now. I'm going to even that out. I'm just going to give them each 40%. And then I'm going to click the normalize button. So that's going to bring everything to 100% down here at the bottom. Jacksonville, Houston, really the only thing that I thought about doing is upping Woody Marks a bit. I don't think I'm actually going to do it. I think I'm going to just leave Woody Marks as is with Davis Mills at quarterback, just not sure that they're going to put up many points. So I'm going to skip doing anything to the Jacksonville, Houston game. Saints Panthers already getting to a fair amount of Rico Dowdle. He's really the only priority here. If Tedero McMillan ends up missing the game, then maybe I'll want a bit of Jalen Coker or somebody else on the Panthers. But as of right now, I don't have any really strong plays from this game, so I'm going to skip past it. Patriots Buccaneers, I'm getting to a fair amount of this game already. I'm getting to a ton of Trevion Henderson, maybe even more than I'd like, but I'm not going to do anything to like lower that. I think I'm happy to get to a fair amount of Trevion Henderson, getting to some Drake May already, Baker Mayfield getting to the stack. So I don't think I need to do anything to get to more of this game. Baltimore, Minnesota, there are some angles that I want to play here. So again, I want more of Lamar Jackson. I also want more of Derrick Henry. So I'm going to try just increasing the points scored and the number of plays run here, because it's sort of tough to just focus on getting to more of Lamar Jackson. Like, I don't know that I necessarily want to give him more of the rushing market share. I don't know that I want to change it to like lower the rush rate or any of that kind of stuff. It's tough with these rushing quarterbacks. So I think the best way to get to more of Lamar Jackson without and also get to more of Derrick Henry, it's just increase the points scored and the number of plays that they run. And also, Rashad Bateman is also a priority of mine. So I'm going to change the number of points scored, the pace of the game, and then I'm also going to try to increase Rashad Bateman's rates just a little bit to get more there. So I'm going to change points scored from 26.5 all the way up to 28. pace from 53.5. I'm going to bring that up to 57, and I'm just kind of trial and error in this. So I want to make sure, make clear that this is not really a science in the way that I'm changing these numbers. It's just in order to get to more, I know I need to move those numbers up. So in my first run of the Sims, I'm going to move them up, not in a huge way, just kind of incrementally, and then see what the Sims spit out with those changes and adjust from there. So normally I'm going to run the Sims a handful of times before I get close to the exposures that I would like. That's just kind of my approach is incremental changes here to see what happens. But it's not really a science at all. It's more of an art. Rashad Bateman, I am going to actually change his rates here. I think I'm just going to, so I'm going to click this smart adjust button, and I'm just going to take away any receiving work going to Tylan Wallace right now. Just going to give that to Rashad Bateman. So I'm going to bring Tylan Wallace down to 0, bring Bateman up to 17% of the receiving market share, and we'll see if that's enough to get to more of Bateman. On the Viking side, again, I think Aaron Jones, I've been pretty happy with his connection with JJ McCarthy. I think at some point we might just see him take over even more of the backfield, just given how good he's looked with JJ McCarthy. Kind of opens things up for the passing game. So I think I'm actually just going to give him more of the rushing workload rather than giving him. No, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take away some of Jordan Mason's passing game involvement and give that to Aaron Jones. So I'm going to, again, smart adjust is on. I'm just going to move Jordan Mason down to 1% of the receiving market share and bring Aaron Jones up to 14%. Brown's deaths. Now, this is a bigger one for me because I really like Quinshon Judkins in this game. I think he could just have a great workload here. So what I'm going to do is actually just increase the rush rate pretty significantly. I think they could just run the ball a ton here. So what I'm going to do is move the rush rate up from 42.9% all the way up to 46%. And I think that should be enough to get to more of Judkins. Actually, I'm going to move up the rushing touchdown rate also up to 46%. And I think with those changes, just given that Judkins already has 70% of the rushing market share, 80% of the rushing touchdown market share, like that's pretty significant. So just moving up the rush rate for Judkins, I think should get me a fair amount there. Buffalo, Miami, again, I think I'd like more of Josh Allen than I'm getting to currently. So to move up my shares of Josh Allen, I don't know that I want to move up the point scored, maybe just slightly from 29.5. I'll bring that up to 30. Pace, I'm going to move from 58.3 to 60. But clearly, this is already, projecting to be high scoring game for the Bills. They're expected to run a lot of plays. So it really comes down to Josh Allen's projected for a ton of ownership is really the only reason that I'm not going to get much of Josh Allen currently, along with just difficult to know who to stack him with. He has a lot of, fine stacking options, but none that stands out as like the clear best stacking option. So after moving up points scored and the pace of the game, I also like James Cook, so I don't want to get rid of that. Maybe I'll just see if that's enough to get to more of Josh Allen. I don't think I really need to move anything else here. I could give him some more of the rushing workload that's currently going to. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take away some rushing workload from Ty Johnson and give that to Josh Allen. So I'm just going to move Ty Johnson from 8% of the rushing market share down to 4%, and then move Josh Allen up from 24% to 28%. See if that's enough to get to more Josh Allen. Cardinals Seahawks, not really much that I like from the Cardinals side, but on the Seahawks side, I do want to get to a bit more of Kenneth Walker. So I'm just going to move more of the market share, the rushing market share, from Zach Charbonnet to Kenneth Walker. So I'm going to move Charbonnet down to 38% and Walker up to 53%. And see if that's enough to get more of Kenneth Walker into my lineups. Detroit, Washington, I'm tempted to try to get more of Jahmyr Gibbs because currently I'm not getting to much. And I think this could be a game where the Lions score a lot of points and Gibbs maybe, not getting a ton of ownership here at 8,000. So I'm intrigued by Gibbs. Currently, like I'm not going to do anything yet to get to more of Gibbs because I'm getting to a bit and I don't feel that strongly about it relative to other running backs here. So I'm going to leave that as is. I am going to increase Chris Rodriguez a bit here. So currently Rodriguez and Bill getting an even split, 33 to 33% of the rushing market share. I want to see what happens if I just move this to Rodriguez getting the majority of the market share at just 4,200. So I'm going to move Rodriguez all the way up to, let's see, I'm going to move him up to 46% and move Ja'Cory Cross-Gameret down to 20%, I think is how I'm going to play this. So I'm going to move, again, Bill down to 20% of the rushing market share, Rodriguez up to 46%. which is a pretty drastic change in the market share for those two running backs. But I would not be surprised to see Rodriguez take on, I mean, even more than I'm giving him right here. Like if he's running well, maybe they just run with Rodriguez. So I want to see what will happen if I give him a pretty drastic boost in the rushing market share. Again, usually I'm moving things by like a couple percent here and there. This is a pretty drastic change to move him up 13%, but I think this is just a big unknown, and he's not getting much ownership, and he's only 4,200. So I want to see what that will do with that change there. Now you can see, because I have the smart adjust button on, and Rodriguez already has a better share of the touchdown market share. When I actually split things evenly with the rushing market share, it actually pushed up the touchdown market share to 104%. So now I need to normalize to get back to 100% there. Rams and Niners, again, I'm not getting to as much Christian McCaffrey as I would like. I think that's just because he's being projected for so much ownership. I'm tempted to do something to get to more of McCaffrey, but for now, I'm just going to leave this as is and see if some of the other changes that I made, maybe I'm getting to more value elsewhere, which makes it easier to get to some McCaffrey. I'm guessing I'm not going to get to more McCaffrey because I pushed up some of the value running backs, but I think I'm just going to leave it as is for now. So with those changes, I'm going to click the SimRunner Pro button again. Again, this is going to take a few minutes. I'm going to cut that part out of the video. All right, the second run of the Sims are in. I'm just going to, again, read off some of the top lineups here. Then I'll go through my player exposures at each position and talk about some things that I might want to change if I were to run the Sims again. Starting with top lineups. Top one here is Justin Fields with Garrett Wilson and Mason Taylor as James Cook, Trevion Henderson, Marvin Harrison Jr., Amon-Ra St. Brown, Trey McBride, and the Bucks defense. Second lineup is a Jared Goff double stack with Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta. Also has Rico Dowdle, Devin Achane, Wan'Dale Robinson, Marvin Harrison Jr., Juwan Johnson, and the Browns defense. Third lineup is JJ McCarthy double stack with Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson. Doesn't have any bringbacks. Has Quinshon Judkins, James Cook, Emeka Egbuka, Juwan Johnson, Sam Laporta, and the Jags defense. Fourth lineup is Jackson Dart double stacked with Darius Slayton and Wan'Dale Robinson. Also doesn't have any bringbacks. Has Trevion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins, Zay Flowers, Sam Laporta, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and the Seahawks defense. Fifth lineup, fifth different quarterback, has Sam Darnold triple stacked with Cooper Kupp, JSN, and Rashid Shaheed. Has Trevion Henderson, Aaron Jones, Sam Laporta, Puka Nacua, and the Commanders defense. Looking at some of my top exposures at quarterback, I'm getting to 21% JJ McCarthy, 15% Jared Goff, 13% Jackson Dart. No other quarterbacks in double digits. Now, the quarterbacks that I wanted to get to more of are the pay-ups in Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. You can see here the changes I made to Lamar Jackson worked. I got to 9% Lamar Jackson, now about even with the field. Josh Allen, though, still not getting to any Josh Allen. I barely changed things for the Bills, just moved up the points scored slightly, moved up the pace slightly. I think in order to get to Josh Allen a bit more, I might need to move down this projected ownership number. Maybe I need to give him more of the rushing market share. Oh, I did do that. I gave him a bit more of the rushing market share. Still didn't get to any Josh Allen. A bit surprised that the changes I made didn't get to at least a little bit of Josh Allen. I think I'm still going to go back and make some changes to try to get some Allen exposure, because I think against this Dolphins defense, he could put up just a ton of fantasy points, always live to put up, 30, 40 fantasy points. So would be pretty risky to not have any Josh Allen. I also think I would probably try to get to more of Drake May. Currently not getting, just getting to 1% at 6,400. I think May is always alive for some big games. So I think that's another change I would make, is maybe push up the pass rate of the Patriots, because I'm already getting to a ton of Trevion Henderson. Maybe I'd rather just put more of my eggs into the passing game for the Patriots there. So I think that's one more change I would make as well. At running back, I'm getting to 35% Rico Dowdle, 35% James Cook, 11% Christian McCaffrey, 12% Devin Achane, 22% Quinshon Judkins, 35% Trevion Henderson, 15% Kenneth Walker. As far as changes I made, I'm happy I didn't even do anything to get to more of Christian McCaffrey. I am now at least in double digits, so not quite as big of a fade there. Happy to see that. Up to 22% Quinshon Judkins, which I'm also pretty happy to be above the field there. I might even take a more overweight stance than I have right now on Quinshon Judkins, but glad to see things moving in the right direction. Trevion Henderson, I got to a bit less with some of the other changes I made, which I'm cool with. Getting 35% Trevion Henderson is still quite a bit. I'm up to 15% Kenneth Walker. That looks great. 7% Derrick Henry. That looks closer to where I would like it to be. Just 1% Jahmyr Gibbs. I think I might need to do something to try to get to more Gibbs, maybe give him more of the passing game involvement or something, because I think he could be in for a big game against the Commanders. So this is pretty risky for a player that I like to only have 1%. So that might be a change that I make. Getting to 9% Aaron Jones now. So at least pretty well over the field. Happy to see that. Still just 3% Kyle Monangai. I'm not trying to take a big stance on Kyle Monangai, but still might want a bit more there. Up to 5% C-Rod. That's about where I'd like to be. Just a bit more than the field is at on C-Rod. I still think the floor is pretty low. I don't know what the ceiling is on Chris Rodriguez. Just the price is nice enough that, and I think the workload could be nice enough that I want some there. But this is a big enough stand for me on Chris Rodriguez. At wide receiver, I'm at 32% Amon-Ra St. Brown, 25% JSN, 18% Emeka Egbuka, 26% Zay Flowers, 19% Puka Nacua, 23% Justin Jefferson, 21% Garrett Wilson, 27% Wan'Dale Robinson, 12% Marvin Harrison Jr., 23% Jordan Addison, 13% Tez Johnson, 10% Jameson Williams, 11% Darius Slayton. I don't think I made any changes to get to more of Jerry Jeudy, which I don't feel that strongly about it. So I think that I'm probably fine with it. I still might try to get a bit more than the 1% I'm getting now of Jerry Jeudy, just given the matchup. But I don't feel all that strongly about it. Similarly, like Jalen Coker didn't make any changes there. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll try to get to just a bit of Jalen Coker, especially if Teteroa McMillan is out. But that's not a huge stand I want to take. Rashad Bateman was one of the bigger stands. I made a big change to Bateman's market share, not that big of a change, but a little over 1% change. I'm up to 7% Bateman now, along with getting more Lamar Jackson. So happy to see that. I'm more than double the field on Bateman. That's probably fine. Like, I'm not trying to take a huge stance on Bateman. I might get a bit more than this, but it's not something that I'm trying to get him in like 30% of my lineups. I just want to have an overweight stance there for a player that's not getting a ton of ownership and I think has some upside. So maybe I'll take a bigger overweight stance than 7%, but not by that much. This is a pretty big stance on Wan'Dale Robinson, and I like it if Wan'Dale Robinson comes in at 7% because this is a slot funnel matchup for Wan'Dale Robinson. I like the role with Jackson Dart. Obviously, no Malik Neighbors. Everything looks good for Wan'Dale here at 5,300. This is about half the projected ownership that I've seen elsewhere, though. So I'm going to keep an eye on projected ownership. I might increase this a bit, which would then probably decrease the amount that I get of Wan'Dale Robinson. Again, I like it if he does come in at 7%. I like to have a lot of him, but if he ends up chalkier than this, I might not take such an overweight stance there. At tight end, again, I don't have any major stands that I want to take here. I'm getting to 21% Trey McBride, 31% Sam Laporta, 10% George Kittle, 15% Jawan Johnson, 11% Mason Taylor. No other tight ends in double digits. I thought maybe I get to more of the Baltimore guys. And actually, I'm getting 9% Mark Andrews. That seems fine with the amount of Lamar Jackson that I have. 4% Isaiah Likely as well. And I'm at just 1% David Njoku. Again, I might make some changes there if Harold Fannin ends up missing. But as of right now, Fannin projected to be in, so I'm not going to get a ton of Njoku. Three defenses in double digits have 13% of the Texans, 12% of the Browns, and 11% of the Rams. Again, I don't usually do a lot to get to more or less of defenses. Things are going to correlate as they should in the Sims, so I'm generally just going to leave it as is. So that's going to do it. I'll run the Sims a handful of times, get closer and closer to the projected to the exposures that I'd like across my portfolio. But for this video, I'm just going to do the one run. I gave you some of the things that I would change going forward, but I was happy to see that I got closer to the exposures that I would like to be at with that. Some of the changes I made after the first run of the Sims, still some changes that I would make. Again, I usually am going to run the Sims a handful of times before I get to the lineups I'm actually going to use. Typically recommend if you're new to run the Sims, I recommend waiting until Sunday morning to run them, just in case we get some breaking news, we get some players out. That's going to change things drastically. Now we're not expecting a ton of news today, so you might be able to run them on Saturday and have some strong lineups. But generally, there's going to be some news that breaks overnight that maybe change things a bit. Sometimes drastically, sometimes just moderately, but usually my recommendation is wait until about an hour before the slate starts and then run the Sims a few times to get to the lineups that you like. Anyway, that's going to do it. Again, if you haven't done so, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. And of course, if you haven't signed up for Run the Sims, use that promo code Neil to get 50% off your first payment on any NFL product. Huge bump in the promo. Happy to see that. Good luck this weekend, everybody, and I'll see you on Sunday.